Hey, everybody, guess what? It's Thursday. Hurry up and get all your work done before Friday and before the weekend. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Welcome to TLD Cast, the Training, Learning, and Development broadcast. We also do a chat, we have a conference, we have online events, and we are also, and more importantly, a community. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for being a part of the Training, Learning, and Development community. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here, but we also know that even though this is a very informal conversation, that there is a ton of value to be had each and every morning. So if you are enjoying yourself today and putting some of these great conversations to work and learning through other people's experiences, then you came to the right place for some professional development, and we appreciate you guys taking the time. When you hit up our website, also know that there is a membership option, and the membership will get you into some special events that are coming up that we are creating in the process of, one of which is the XAPI playlist. We've started to create a new idea that Luis came up with that I think is awesome. The idea of a playlist is basically just building a bunch of TLD casts around a particular topic, right? So like a playlist. And our first actual playlist is going to be live, and it will be on XAPI because you asked for it. We asked everybody in a brief poll what you wanted to talk about, what the hottest topics were, and XAPI landed in the #1 spot by a pretty significant margin, I believe. So we are doing that on the 19th, and we are really, really excited about the group of folks we have doing that, and you can check that out on the website as well. And you know what? One particular thing that I forgot to ask our guest today is how to pronounce his last name. And so I'm just going to take a shot at it and say, hey, everybody, our guest today is Chris Bergeron.
Right.
Oh, yes. Okay. Normally I don't do too well with last names. Is it a hard G or a soft G?
Definitely a soft G. It's French. It's like, when I grew up, the Bergeron part of the phone book was, probably half the phone book because it was such a common thing. It was like Smith.
Yes, it's like one of our members, Paul Buffler, is Buffleur. The way it's spelled, it looks very French. I don't know. I always just like saying his last name too. So yours ranks up there as well, for sure. But hey, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be part of the show.
Yeah, we were just getting to know each other. 5 minutes ago. So let's just jump right in and let everybody else get to know you a little bit too. Tell everybody who Chris is.
My name's Chris Bergeron, and I'm a program director for a brand new instructional design and technology program that's launching in June out of Bellevue, Nebraska at Bellevue University. And I get to work from home, as you can see my glorious office. And I'm on the East Coast. And so that's awesome. Pretty much what I'm doing most of these days is building out that program and writing lots of classes and helping students.
Yes, and I'm getting the big stick over the head saying, change the screen, Brent. So I'll go ahead and do that. And maybe if there is a link to that program, if you want to drop it into the chat, you can absolutely do that. Or I'm sure there are a couple folks furiously Googling it, trying to find it for you as well. But while you're dropping it in there, you were also starting to tell me how you got into this business. And I love hearing people's origin stories and how you kind of got into this space. And so why don't you take us in the time machine back a little bit and tell us how you got here.
Oh my gosh. So when I finished college, I ended up finding my way down to Massachusetts and working in the tech industry. So I worked at an engineering firm. I bounced around a little bit, and I ended up working for a hospital. And built myself up. So I was a senior level server engineer. So I was one of the technical guys. And, I found myself doing whiteboard chats and doing some technical documentation and some technical writing and guides and job aids. And that never was part of my job. But every time I would do something like that, the comment was always, "Oh, you should really be a teacher." And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a teacher. I like playing with the toys. And then, I was there, 10 years of being an engineer and climbing that ladder.
Yeah.
Life changes happened. And I desperately needed a job that was excruciatingly close to home. And so it just so happened where I was living at the time, the superintendent's office was a 10th of a mile away, and they were looking for a director of technology. So they looked at my technical background and like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
So I get the job and I start, and I don't know, like if anyone else has had this experience. When I was a kid, my grandparents lived on a lake, and I remember the first summer I really jumped off the end of the dock. I ran the whole thing. I jumped as far as I could, landed, and I pushed myself up from the bottom and had that moment of panic when I'm like, I didn't push off hard enough. I'm not going to make it to the top. And that's what it was like jumping from a strictly technical role to now I'm in education, and people are asking me questions that have to do with not only, how does this work, but why does this work and why is this appropriate for my students? And so I ended up going back to school and earned a master's in education. And
Okay.
so then I was able to learn those things and bring myself up to speed. And I really enjoyed, that's when I started to learn that the part of my job that I loved the most had a name, and the name was instructional design. And so to do more of that, I became a school librarian and then eventually a professor. And now I'm running my own program, which is pretty
awesome.
Exciting and also pretty scary.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's, you definitely are all in on the, trying new skills and trying new things and just jumping in with both feet for sure. I love it. It's awesome. And I'm glad you brought up going into the program, because that's always part of, one of the questions, too, is once you realized you really liked doing this, how did you teach yourself, or how did you learn? And then some folks do it on their own, and others do go back and get a degree. And, how did you find, the degree part of it, right? How did you?
Oh, it's kind of interesting. So by the time I ended up going back to school for education, I had already had a hobby of making small videos. I had a video blog in 2004, so that was pretty early for video blogs. When I think I had a video blog before YouTube, actually.
Wow,
and
that's awesome.
We were uploading them to archive.org and like getting to manually put in the enclosure in the RSS feed. And so I already had started to build this, and I was doing some of the things, teaching on my own. And I think that one of the things that I enjoyed about going back to school and doing the academic route was I knew how to do a lot of the different things, but I didn't know why. And so I really became conscious of people who were missing one of those two pieces. Either they didn't know how to do something, they knew what they needed to do, but didn't know how to do it, or they knew how to do it, but they couldn't navigate the path. And I think that that's really what drew me to academia in general, is sort of bringing those together, like the theory of, all right, I know the Dick and Carey model, I know all the different pieces, but here it is on Tuesday and I have something to do, so let's be practical and make it work.
Yeah. Do you, it's interesting. I noticed, I forget who said it. Yeah, Kim, recognized the, coming from that technical communications space, that direction, starting there. And that always does seem to be a trigger for folks that come into this industry from the technical side of things. It's that, people were either bothering me all the time, asking me questions about what I knew. And I just wanted, so I wrote a manual, or I did a video, or I did something just so I wouldn't get asked that question over and over again. Or when people ask, I could just point them to this video that I did, or this document that I created and whatnot. And then you kind of start to realize, hey, I kind of like doing this stuff, and I maybe I could make that last one better, and it just kind of goes from there, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's tons and tons of fun. Another question that I like to ask, but I have not been asking it of late to people is, have you seen any good e-learning lately that really made you say, wow, that's really good? A solution or, some sort of, I don't know, maybe solving a learning problem of some sort. Is anything stand out recently for you?
Oh, sure. Well, I've been trying to find an excuse to buy sort of a point of view camera, and I saw behind the scenes, it was out of Australia, I think it was Bella Vista Studios, and she was showing how they were doing a point of view branching scenario, and I thought, God, I need to find an excuse to do something like that. That just looks fun.
Yeah. How, so let me take us in a different direction on the program that you're creating. Are there any constraints that you have, or is this pretty wide open? Do you get to just kind of choose whatever you want to build this thing?
It's a lot of whatever I want, but there are constraints, obviously. And one of the things that I'm sort of blessed with is a lot of the people who are in charge, the dean and some of the senior administration, they're all sort of like, well, you have complete creative control, and that sort of makes me nervous. But the university has an absolutely fantastic instructional design department and team. And so it's both a resource that I have to sit down and talk with people. What are the things that are missing? What are the things that we need to make sure we include? As well as they all know that they call me on stuff, which is great. I was told the other day that one of the things that I was working on was way too wordy. So I'm like, this, you do know, you should probably break this down.
Yeah, it sometimes can be a little bit. I would think, just personally, if I was doing it, I would, and knowing that there was already an instructional design department at the school, it would feel a little bit like they're looking over your shoulder, wondering, is he going to do this right? Is he going to build a good program that I would want to go to if I had to do this all over again?
And that's a great reminder, is that because I'm trying to write what would be the ideal program if I were to start over. What would I want? And so there are definitely some elements there where I'm being a little selfish. I'm like, I really, one of the things in particular was when I was going through both my master's and my doctorate, every program has you make a portfolio, but it's the same portfolio. All right, go to WordPress.org or WordPress.com, put up an About Me page, and put these 6 homework assignments up, and there's your portfolio. And I mean, it's useful and it's important, but when you go for a job, that's not the portfolio they're expecting. And so I always felt, and I just completely obliterated my portfolio. I'm starting from scratch because I figure if I'm going this loudmouth on how important the portfolio is, mine better be good. So I'm starting from scratch. I'm hoping to have it done by June. And so throughout the entire program, essentially each term has 2 courses that are 8 weeks long. So you've got 16 weeks in a term. And for those entire 16 weeks, there's a separate 1 credit portfolio class. It's focused from day one on building a quality instructional design portfolio. And we start with building your own, obviously, and we're going to just throw something up there for the first couple of weeks, but looking out and evaluating actual professionals working in the field and looking at actual job postings and seeing what are the tools and skills that people in your specific vertical are looking for. I mean, if you want to go into into, healthcare training and training home health aides, and everyone wants Articulate, well, that's easy. You just sign up for the plan and make sure you do all of your homework assignments in Articulate if you can. And and by June, wow, expectations. Yeah, I'm going to be pulling a lot of stuff that I've done in the past. I'm not starting from scratch. I'm just reorganizing it.
Yeah, Dana has a great question. She's building her portfolio as well, she says, and she wants to add my number one takeaway from this project was section. Do you think that's a valuable thing for her to add?
I definitely do. So one of the things that I recommend for when doing the portfolio is having a portfolio reflection. So, if you're doing it on a web page and it's kind of, you have your big flashy image that says, hey, this is great, look at this, and then have a breakdown that provides context. This was for a client. You could say this was an internal project. This was for a client who needed this to be in the company colors, and that's why the colors don't look like what I would have chosen. This is for a client, they were doing sales things, and they were going to have people viewing it on their phone on the train in the morning. So that's why the screen is set up this way. And I think that having the story that goes behind it really gives context, and then throw in the behind the scenes, if as much of the finished product as you can share. Here I am throwing out clients, and I'm thinking, yeah, I love non-disclosure agreements. They work great for the portfolio.
Yeah, that's always the troublesome part. Yeah, I love the idea of having sort of a behind the scenes piece to your portfolio as well, because first of all, context is important, right? And you can write that into a story, but to also be able to show your process and how you got from one place to the next and how you made those decisions along the way, I think would be really cool too. Obviously, it's a lot of extra work, but that tells a really good story too.
Right. And you said show the work. I'm trying to reach behind me on the bookshelf and grab the book, Show Your Work.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's the thing. The non-disclosures Deborah was saying. That's why I really am a big fan of having side projects that are just whatever. Like, if do a project for your kid's school, do something just fun, do something crazy. I was joking with someone that it would be great to set up like a how-to guide for martini making. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's not gonna make people turn away from you. But something on creativity, something on how to do something in instructional design. Those really help.
Yeah, and I think you just answered the question that Craig dropped in, but I'm going to ask it anyways. He said, how do you overcome the lack of content to share in a portfolio due to work product restrictions and little outside free time?
That's exactly my problem right now. Is so much of the work that I do is before I started at the university was very, very in person and very, I'm going to do some custom thing just for Jackie. And now it's all behind, it's in the middle of Blackboard. I can't really screenshot it. And it comes down to those side projects, and it's coming down with something. I'm working on a side project on the 12 pillars of creativity, just because I want to show how to integrate email and video and put it behind a really light LMS and how to build in the tracking there. And even a small project like that, you can end up with a lot of artifacts for the portfolio, because then you have all the storyboards, you have all of the color palette design.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think any project, even if you can't show it, you could. I mean, I think there's elements, right? You can strip out all the IP, right? The important content that you're not allowed to show, and what you're left with still is the work, right? So really, all you need to do is think about, okay, how did I create this around this particular content? Create different content depending upon what it is. You could even maybe make it up. I don't know. I mean, if it's like a product, you could invent your own product and put that into it instead. And then, you just shouldn't let that work go to waste, I guess is what I'm saying. And so taking any relevant bits that you've put
And
into
pulling it
that
out.
project, I think you can put into the portfolio safely in certain ways, but you do have to just be careful that, you're not sharing, visually any of the important stuff. I mean, obviously, in some cases, even the code that you write becomes the
Property
product of the client, right? Or whoever you're
Right.
working for, but nobody can really see that. So to be able to add the final product and talk about that on your portfolio, I don't know, and maybe there's a legal scholar here that could prove me wrong, but I would think that's okay, from an academic perspective.
I always get nervous, and one of the things is I get nervous about the things that become invisible to us. The way that a smoker stops smelling cigarette smoke on their clothes, or the way that the people who live close to the train tracks stop hearing the train. So I worry that if I share something that's behind the wall of either a non-disclosure agreement or a work for hire, that I'm going to miss something because I've seen it every day for 3 weeks and I stop seeing it. And that's why I like the side project.
Gotcha.
Even if it's silly.
That's a great point. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think at the end of the day, the side project, I really do feel like is that is your best win, right? But I'm just trying to think of.
Yeah. The other thing is don't forget to ask. Like, just because there's a non-disclosure agreement when you're doing it, you could do a mock-up of the portfolio page you want to do. Go to the guy who made you sign the non-disclosure agreement. Go, can I put this on my website? I'm so proud of this work. And if he says no, say, here's a marker. Cross out the things you want me to take off. And maybe you'll get a yes. It's easier to ask than not.
No, that's a great tip. See, everybody, you get great tips here on TLDcast every single day.
But yes, I'm paranoid about letting stuff out. And but you're right. I was reading Deborah's comment about people who are super locked up. I that stuff makes me nervous. Yeah,
and rightfully so. You don't, like I said, you don't want to get sued by anyone or let some sort of top secret thing, slip out. I think, Craig, another interesting way to deal with the lack of time or the lack of a big chunk of time is to, take those small moments and break up the pieces of the project into small things. So let's say you can carve out an hour one day. Well, obviously you can't whip out the whole thing in an hour, but maybe for a side project of some sort, you could at least brainstorm for that hour what you want to be and just sketch for an hour and find what you need, and then put it aside and wait another week or two until you've got another extra hour or two to apply to it. Go back to it real quick and then pick off one other thing and take a step forward and just do little bits and pieces of it. You'd be amazed at how fast you can start pulling something really useful together if you just start taking a chunk out of the project a little bit at a time.
And another thing to dovetail on that is if you can't share any of the work you're producing and you don't have time to produce something that's just for the sake of the portfolio, another thing you can do is share, instead of sharing examples of your work, share examples of how you work. And so then you can break down the instructional design process that you're personally using as you've evolved. This is how I storyboard. This is how I do a mock-up. This is how, and then so your portfolio instead becomes not examples of work that you've done for clients, but rather demonstrations of what a new client could expect when you walk in the door. The first thing I like to do when I meet with a client is this, and then there it is.
Perfect. I'm going to take my 30-minute break a few minutes early, just so that we don't miss this. But I'm going to sort of tease the second half of this conversation to also give you a little bit of time to think about it, because since you're putting this program together, I'm assuming you're going to be doing a lot of, you mentioned the Dick and Carey, and the models and the methods and those theories. I'm really curious to get your thoughts on those theories and those models. How important are they today, right? And how do they fit into sort of, what we all talk about? Think about that, and maybe some folks will drop some stuff in the chat while I take this quick break, and then we will come back. How about that?
Works perfect.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here again today, and thank you for putting up with me taking a break 30 minutes into every single live show. I know you guys are just over there in the chat chatting anyways. You know, for a minute there, I thought maybe I'd forgotten to hit the go live button again, and y'all were ignoring us, but you guys are all dialed in now, so it's all good. Thanks for hanging out with us. Craig, thanks for jumping in and following along, dropping in the links, all that fun stuff. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to everybody and say thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for being a big part of TLDC. And to remind all of you that we wouldn't do this if you weren't interested in it and if you weren't getting some value from these conversations. So continue to feed us information, whatever you need, whatever type of conversations you want to have, whatever type of guests you'd like us to have on the show. You know, filling up our calendar is not as easy as we make it look. So if you know somebody who wants to be a guest, just let us know and we will do our best to get them on. You know, some folks are harder to get and harder to get scheduled than others. So those of you that have offered up suggestions, we have followed up. But some folks, they'll connect us with their admin or, you know, and then trying to squeeze in some calendar time gets really hard. And that's one of the reasons why TLDcast tries to stay pretty informal, because a lot of that scheduling and a lot of that admin work is extremely time consuming. And like I've said before, I'm a practitioner just like you guys. I've got other jobs, I've got other work, I've got other things that I do as well to stay active and to stay current in the industry, because I love doing the work that we do. So you know, that's what's happening in the background behind the scenes. If you're curious and want to know, and always feel free to reach out to us at any given time. Hey, listen, these images as they come up are fantastic because it reminds me of things I need to talk about. Don't forget about the XAPI playlist online event that's coming up. That's going to be a ton of fun. And so it'll be the first of its kind for us in trying to figure out and wade through the waters of doing an event like this, an online event. So give us some support. Let us know what you think. Give us some feedback. Put it on your calendar. Make sure you join us for that. Tell all your friends about that, as well as telling everybody about this conversation today. Click that invite button at the top and tell all your friends that we've got 30 minutes of chatting about everybody's favorite subject, all of the methods and models of instructional design. Yes, we are going to open that can of worms and we are going to have that conversation. It's going to be good. And thanks again, Craig, for dropping that in there. Don't forget about membership, because you will need that in order to get into the XAPI playlist event for free. So become a paid member today and get yourself all hooked up so that you can be a part of that outstanding event. So again, we thank you all for being great community members and being a part of what Luis and I are doing here at TLDC. Thank you so much. And with that, I will start and kick this off. I know everybody is cringing behind the scenes. Oh no, is Brent really going to talk about this? Is he going to torture the poor new guy? Of course.
Of course, no. But no, I love theory, and I think that the place that I really discovered that I needed instructional theory and I needed instructional design models was in that transition from being just a technician who could fix anything and make anything to being someone who now has to work across this broad context. And, you know, my first role in education, I was pre-K up through 12th grade. So, you know, you'd have 3 teachers asking the same question, but their learners are so different. And I didn't understand these things. So that's where I really started to appreciate the theory coming in. And I've grown to love it so much that above my desk, I actually have a 4 feet by 2 foot giant painting I did of the Dick and Carey model. Just, it's all abstract and cute. Nobody knows what it is unless they're a member of the tribe. And then they just start laughing.
Oh man, that is awesome! You can't take a picture and share that with us in the Slack group. I will.
And then I need to do the Kemp model for over there, because that's where I got the idea. I was at a gallery and there was just this painting, and it was all and I'm like, that looks just like the Kemp model, but it's so abstract. And I was thinking, I need to do those for my office.
That's awesome. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. But so let's dig a little bit deeper here, because I really do want to have this conversation. This is the important stuff. So let's start with this. I mean, obviously, so starting off in K-12, I have always thought that is a great place to get your start, because you do start to realize the concept of needing to understand your learners
Absolutely.
is so critical, right? And I think that is one part of the instructional design theories or methods, whatever we call it, that I think gets skipped, because a lot of times instructional design becomes, oh, you're using the Addie model, blah, blah,
Right.
you know, and whatever. And it's like, well, no, instructional design really is about just remembering to look at certain things about what you're trying to do, the learner, right, first, and understanding their context with, you know, what they're working in, all that kind of stuff. But I'm just rambling now. But so let's start with this. What was the very first sort of maybe instructional design method or model that you learned and you thought, I didn't really realize there were frameworks for this, or different things? Because there's so many, right? I mean,
There are so many. And so the first one I learned, I think, is the same as a lot of people, was Addie. And then after that, in school, we sort of looked at some of the others. But I think one of the criticisms of a lot of the instructional design models is actually its greatest strength. And that's that I hear all the time that people look at instructional design models as recipes. And I actually think that's the perfect analogy, because, if you're wanting to bake an apple pie, then, if you don't know how, you're going to grab a recipe. But when you're making an apple pie with grandma, she just throws everything in there and you end up with this perfect apple pie. And so the recipe becomes a teaching tool. And just how every apple pie recipe describes the same thing, how do you end up with the perfect apple pie from different people's perspectives? All of the instructional design models, the reason there are so many is it's teaching how to develop a really fantastic instructional experience from different people's perspectives that apply in different situations. And so as you learn them all and sort of look at them, you start to realize, well, they all have basically the same parts. They all overlay each other. And eventually you start to be more like grandma, and you're just doing it on what you think is instinct, but really you've just internalized that knowledge of, I need to understand my learner, I need to understand the goals, I need to make sure I have an assessment model that makes sure that I'm reaching the goals and it's not just that it's fun. But I also need to be like grandma. I love it.
I know. I was just going to say, Michael nailed it. I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, take the heat off me. Take the heat off me. Somebody come up with that hashtag. Come on. And then Mike, like right on cue, just as I'm about to type it in, Michael drops it in. Yes. Great.
I was thinking about this yesterday because it was pie day. I'm thinking, where's my pie?
Oh, this is awesome. So do you have, well, I don't even want to ask that. I mean, so let me ask the chat. So, and as you're building this program, I'm sure it's crossed your mind, right? How much do we put into the theory of it, right?
Yeah.
And so how much is theory versus practice? And, how much, importance are we going to put on it? I don't know. I'd love to hear from the chat group too. Everybody hanging out. Like if you went back to school, and just pretending that you were back when you first started, how much of that would you want? And I'm not sure if anybody really has thought that far along, because they're still talking pies. But have you thought that through? Do you know what your program's going to look like?
So I think that one of the fundamentals for me, ultimately, this type of a program, the master's degree, people want to be able to leave with the skills to do the job. They want to show up somewhere, do good work that they can be proud of. And I think that the theory is a supporting actor in that you need to have the tangible skills. You need to be able to be in the middle of the LMS and something's not working, so you hit forget this, I'm just going into the HTML code and fix the stupid thing myself. But you also need to have the theory to know why you're doing the things that you're doing. So you need to be able to jump behind the scenes and fix the HTML code because the stupid auto code isn't working. And you also need to know why you're scaffolding the instructional experience this way. And you need to know that you have to do an instructional analysis. You have to, break down, do the instructional analysis and know what your different steps are for the learner to sort of progress. And so it's sort of that balance so that they have the skills to know how to do it, as well as the background of theory to know why they're doing it.
Yeah, and there are so the reason why I think this is a great conversation to have and to talk about this kind of stuff is that I think there is a struggle that maybe is just sort of not quite a wave that's crashing over us just yet, but maybe it's a swell that's building up. But as tools get a lot easier to use, as the internet gets easier to create content, and it's like you can create just about anything in a browser these days. There's full-on video editing. There's authoring tools that are browser-based. All of that. There's so much you can do, and anybody can do it because a lot of them are even free. There actually is a lot of, just like the internet as a whole, there's a lot of bad content, but there is also some really, really good content out there created by folks who have no instructional design knowledge whatsoever. They don't know what they're doing, but they create good content. And so that's what makes us all kind of at some point scratch our heads and go, are all of these people that just have a knack for it and this ability to create content going to put the people with the degrees in the academia and that have been doing it for years kind of out of work? Or, because if everybody can do it, then why do they need us?
Well, I think that the tools are getting easier, but I don't worry so much about, anybody being able to create a great instructional experience. I think that in every different group, you're going to have people who teach themselves, the autodidactics who just jump in and do it enough so that they do build the skills. And if they put in, 10,000 hours and have produced, 500, 600 videos, and you're seeing the 712th, well, yeah, I'd expect them to be good. And I think that where those of us who went through and got the degree, and it's sort of a jump start, you can skip a significant amount of that background of what makes a good video, and specifically what makes a good instructional video, by leaning on the backs of others who've gone before you, and not having to build 1,000 videos before you get good. You can start to. I'm starting Minecraft with my 5-year-old. Oh my god!
Paul mentioned earlier that
so great.
5-year-old found us very captivating. So say hi to Paul's 5-year-old. Although they've bailed on us and they're doing Minecraft now, so I guess that's all right. Paul, we'll let you go. It's okay. It's all good. So yeah, at the risk of getting too sidetracked on this, some favorite examples of mine when I do have these conversations are, for one, like Lee Lefevre, we're going to have on as a guest. He started Common Craft. And he had zero understanding of instructional design or anything like that. They were just really creative, two creative minds, he and his wife, just, how can we make a really complex topic really, really, really simple? And they just started working it through.
Well, I think they're a great example of people who just sort of intuitively understand. I think for them, hearing their story and stuff, it's empathy. They're very empathetic. They're very creative, and to throw a model out there or a theory, look at design thinking. I mean, the first 3 steps are empathize with your people, and so they were able to empathize with their audience. Right. And so the other piece is revision.
Yeah, it's funny to me that, we call it the Addie Model, which is, do all of your analysis, right? Understand the learner, understand the content, all of that. It's basically the same thing as the design thinking models and theories, right? They say the same thing, understand the people, the user first, and put yourself in their shoes. And, we call it empathy right now, but I think every creative model to a certain extent puts that element first. Mm-hmm. And yet sometimes we forget. We get excited about the content. We get excited about maybe the new tool that we learned, right? Oh, hey, we learned how to do drag and drop. So I got to make sure I put that in because now I know how to do it.
Well, yeah, no, I was just thinking about how I want to find an excuse to do a point of view branching video based scenario. I'm like, I'm going to find one, but I'm going to get some content somewhere and I'm like, this is perfect for it. But you're right. It comes down to you have to go, and it's difficult because I work from home, and I love working from home, and I love working from coffee shops, and I love being around people. But sometimes you forget your learners are people too, and you should probably, go have a cup of tea with your learner and actually find out what are these different pieces, and what are their limitations and what are their goals. And I say limitations, I mean, my father works in a machine shop, so forget audio.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not going to work. And then, I think of another friend who's a salesman, and he's in his car for like 6 hours a day. Well, forget video. So learning the limitations and sort of the context of where your learners are going to be absorbing what you're producing, and,
Yeah, I mean, it's so incredibly important. And it's funny, John has a fantastic point about, it's almost like there's a universal truth out there, a shared human experience. And there's, it's kind of funny, kind of tongue in cheek, but it really is kind of right on the money, because that's where all of these models and the different design thinking and everything kind of comes together. And I think that's why just, the term empathy is resonating so well with folks. Like if you start there with basically everything that you do, mm-hmm. You're, whether you've got a degree or you don't, or, whatever you're trying to solve, whatever you're trying to create. I don't know, whoever you're trying to teach, having a little empathy for that person on the other side will get you really far.
No, it certainly will.
So I wonder, are you going to have an Empathy 101 course to help kick people?
I don't know. I'm looking at my my list of classes, and I should have done a whole class just on design thinking, but I didn't do it.
And there's got to be. My guess would be. Maybe not, but wouldn't the university already have one, and that could be like an elective as part of?
Oh yeah, program? No, they do. I've actually taught that one before. It's fun.
Oh, okay, cool.
But no, definitely there's going to be some empathy built in, and it's going to be with the analysis phase, like you mentioned with Addie, because it really is two different words for the same thing. Really get to know your learner and see what they are. Yeah,
for sure. Is there, what do you think about the idea of assessments? I almost hate to. I'm hesitant and I'm stuttering because I'm not really too sure we want to go there, but measuring, right, and doing assessments. Somebody mentioned earlier, XAPI, and so I figured, okay, how do we work that into the conversation without just summoning the XAPI gods into into the chat by using the word? So we'll go with assessments and measuring, success. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that ultimately, if you're developing instructional materials, there's a learning goal. There's you want to either convey a skill or a bit of knowledge, and the only way to know if you're worth the money that you're being paid is are the learners actually learning. And I think that one of the challenges is, especially when you're reading, especially in academia and a lot of the models, they use the word assessment, and people think assessment and they think test. All right, so I'm going to sit down. Number one is, and that's really that's not assessment. That's one minor little piece of assessment. And it comes down to identifying the behavior that you want to see, the skill you want to see demonstrated, and observing it. And most of the time, a test is an easy way to get it into a database, but not the best way to actually identify if learning has taken place. And so it's usually a delay. I like the delay. Do a test right away just to make the database checkers happy, and then do a follow-up observation if possible. Even if it's a small subgroup, are you actually able to do the things that we were trying to get you to do?
Yeah, I've mentioned this before, that I can remember going through school and thinking to myself, even at a really young age, wondering why I always learned the most, not from the instruction, but from the test. But by then it's too late. And so I just always remember thinking to myself, if only I could just take the test, right? And not have to worry about being graded on it, then I would learn a ton. I mean, this would be great, no stress. But the instruction was, slim to none, or just not that great. And I wouldn't really understand things. But once I took the test, then it was like, oh, the light bulbs start going off, right? And you go, oh, now I know why I got that wrong. Well, now I know why I don't understand that. Or now I remember, now it makes sense what he was trying to say in the lecture, a couple weeks ago, and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, dang it, why can't I, if I could have taken the test
first,
first or sooner or something.
Well,
I know a lot of people do that in their models nowadays.
Two pieces in there is, that's why some of the models like Dick and Carey and Backwards Design have you develop the assessment really early in your design process. What exactly do I want to teach? How exactly am I going to measure this? And then look at bridging that gap. And it's also why formative assessment is so important. I mean, not just in the development of the instructional materials and having them reviewed and doing, I love rapid prototyping because I don't like to waste effort. So I'm like really messy rapid prototypes. But in the actual instruction itself, to build in those places where, the learners can have a formative assessment that's low stakes, even if it's just looking over the shoulder and seeing what's going on and checking in. But formative, inform the instruction. It's kind of.
Yeah, are you going to come across, or are you going to address the idea that how and why we do instructional design for academia is different than maybe in the corporate workplace? Because there are a lot of interesting conversations around that, right?
There are.
Creating, doing what you're doing, right? Creating a full-blown curriculum, or even just a course in academia for, a university or for K through 12 or whatever, is very, very different than being in a corporate space and knowing that people need to perform a job, and you're instructing them, or you're creating instruction around more focused on performance.
Right.
Yes, you about the learning, but you're not so concerned about measuring the learning. You're more concerned about that
measuring the performance
side of it,
right? And yes, that's a very, very big difference. And I think that it definitely.
Well, that's why we're going to fix it, John.
That's right. And I think they're different. And I think that it's really difficult to build a program that focuses on both and does them both justice for every student. So one of the things that we're going to try to do is early in the program, because it's just about 2 years, it's 36 credits. So I'm trying to get in the first third of the program to have people identify what their goal is, what their path is. And for a lot of people, they back into the instructional design as a career and then realize, oh wait, I should probably get a master's in this. So most of them, I'm assuming, will be in the field in some capacity and sort of know, well, I work for the local dealerships for auto stuff and doing their onboarding training, and I'd really like to go to Boston and work for Amazon. So they're clearly going to be focusing on the corporate stuff. But you're right. I think that with corporate, it ends up being there's an immediate goal. This performance needs to be taken care of. There's right. and it's sort of moving through all of those things. And academia is a little bit looser almost not with the creativity, but with the content, and sort of more predictive. It's the way I would describe it is corporate side is often developing the skills needed for today and tomorrow, and academia is more hoping you can build enough base so that the students can leave and keep growing as they're going. And it's a different approach. You wouldn't you wouldn't do that in a corporate environment.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You're not going to build a training program that only gets them halfway there and then say, okay, now go do your job. It is your job to get them 100% of the way.
100% there.
Doing it.
But right now, we have new software. You need to use it tomorrow. So today you got to become proficient.
Yeah, I've told this story before, but it is just burned into my brain of my very, very first project, e-learning project right out of graduate school was, because in graduate school, you've got a whole semester to do one project, right? And so you just feel like that's the way the real world's going to be. And, it's Monday morning and my manager says, we need this on e-learning. Can you have it by Friday? It's like I laughed at him and I'm like, are you kidding me? That's not going to happen. But he was a great manager. He was somebody that a good mentor for a few years as well. So, but we did it. We got it done in a week, and it completely changed my idea of how I was going to be functioning in the workplace differently than how I was taught in my academic studies.
I know. I have a project in the back of my head that I'm not going to do, so somebody should do this. I would love to do an instructional design long weekend, so 4 days, where you have behind you like graphic designers and some technical support, and you bring people in and make them go through the entire, like they show up with a project, and you outsource what you can to get it done in 4 days and just run them from start to finish all the way through. I think that would just be insane.
That would be really fun, right? A hackathon.
Exactly.
And
but you need the background supports, I think.
Yeah. Oh, somebody to actually do the work. We just want to sit around and just do the design. That's what we're good at. Oh man, we're getting close to the top of the hour, but this has been a ton of fun, Chris.
It has.
Any final instructional design ideas or thoughts you want to share with folks?
No, I think that especially here, we're all the luckiest people in the world because we have the job that's, I think, the most fun is putting together, great experiences for people and learning constantly, either through learning new tools or learning just from the content that we're given to develop into e-learning. So it's I was just wondering.
I wonder if there would be a way. An interesting exercise might be to ask people to, you've got, depending on how long your class is, but if one of the classes is you come in with a topic, and you just tell them by the end of the class, do the best you can and teach it. Just to let them try, right? And it's not about doing it right or doing it wrong. It's just the idea of what could you come up with under pressure.
I'm stealing that. I've already got it. I know where I'm sticking it. I'm going to do a 48-hour weekend sprint. You have the entire weekend from 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Sunday to get a working prototype of learning on a topic, and I'll make sure that there's a hint of something coming so that they can do a little research on their topic.
Can you do that with students though? I mean, I don't mean to be like the Debbie Downer, especially so late in the program when we're going to end on an up note. But I'm thinking to myself, you've probably got a lot of students at the university level these days, especially grad programs with families, all that kind of stuff, right? And so can you take away their weekend? Come on, Professor Chris, why are you being a buzzkill for everybody's weekend?
There are some really fun things. When I was in the early stages of putting the proposal for the program together, I ended up having to look at almost every single program in the country, and there weren't that many, but I looked at most of them, and there were some really great ideas. One of them was I forget which school. It's somewhere in the Midwest. Every year they go to the ATD conference, and that's like a 1 or a 2 credit class. So maybe something like that could work. Like go a few days early, do the 48-hour sprint, then you're at the conference.
There you go. Total focus.
And then I'm guaranteed to go to the conference every year. So it's like, I got to work it in.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Make that happen. Well, you know what? Anything we can do to help you out here. We really appreciate you becoming a member of the community and hanging out with us and enjoying the podcast. Those of you on the chat, I forgot to mention this, that Chris discovered us on iTunes.
I did. I was listening for a while before I found myself with free time in the day. So I jumped on and here I am.
Yeah. No, it's great. So I'm glad people are paying attention and listening, and just know that, like I said, I mean, if you want to jump in and just ping people, toss a question or an idea, something you're, thinking about, that's what the chat's for, right? I mean, that's what the Slack group is for. You can just jump in there and just drop in a question. Hey, I'm thinking about putting this in the course or doing something like this. What do you guys think?
Oh, I certainly will not shy from that, because I really want to make this a showcase program and make it something that's useful. I want to have graduates to this program go out confident that they can do the work and actually being skilled enough to do the work. And that's kind of.
Well, I've often said, if something like TLD Cast was even available when I was in grad school, I'd have been all over it. But we announced that we do this, to universities with ISD programs and whatnot. And I mean, obviously most kids are in class at 8:00 in the morning, Pacific time, whatever, 11 a.m. Yeah, right. But then get the podcast or whatever, And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's see. You want to be a professional. You're studying something. You want to be a professional in there. And there's a whole bunch of professionals that have been doing the work that you want to do for a long time. And they all hang out for 1 hour a day. Wouldn't that be like better than anything, you could possibly learn in a class or anything like that? So I don't know. It kind of blows my mind, but, maybe we'll, change the face of academia and encourage this kind of conversation.
Actual participation in the field. Absolutely.
Go figure.
Oh my God.
Oh, man. All right, Chris, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I think we dropped in the links earlier. If you want to drop in some more links and say hi to some folks in the chat, that'd be great. I'm going to close out your video for now, though. Thanks again for hanging out with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Take care. What a great day, you guys. Chris, thanks again for hanging out with us. Another fun conversation with an actual practitioner in the work that we do and a new member in the organization. Some of my favorite conversations are with the practitioners that are out there just doing the work that we do. And it's fun to see where the conversations go. So it's a lot of fun, to be sure. Just some more heads up. Informational elements before we go. The XAPI online event is coming up, the XAPI playlist. Don't forget about that. Hit the website to learn more. Don't forget we have an archive of all of these shows. We're probably well over 275 or so episodes. We're probably getting pretty close to 300 at some point. And there's a lot of great content in those episodes. Like Chris said, listen to the podcast, watch the recordings, listen to the recordings. Go hit up the archives on the website, and you can also get the links and all of the other great content. There's a lot of value to be had here. If nothing else, there are tons of great people that hang out here. And so if you're looking for a network, if you're looking to connect, don't be shy. Jump into the chat and say hi to some of these folks. We have some amazing talents in the TLDC community, and a lot of them are all of them are extremely humble in the work that they do. And so you may not really know who they are and how fantastic their work is right away.